All right, welcome everybody to Inside the Coach's Office. I'm your host, Dan Murphy, along with my co host, Brian Barnes. And Brian, the Tigers are going on to the ALDS. They defeat the Guardians 6-3 today. That's something we didn't going into today. I don't know if we expected they were going to win, but they stepped up and got it done.
Yeah, man. So since the last time we talked, I mean, we were very hopeful. I think I picked the Guardians to win. I think you picked the Tigers to win. But wow, what an exciting 3 games, really. All three of the games were nail biters. And it's kind of funny. I've talked to people in the last few days who thought the baseball was a boring crowd. And then, but you watch this and it feels like every pitch and every at bat and every runner that gets on base is a big deal. And you're just like, wow. Um, like every little thing is magnified in these type of games. But really it's been like that for 2 weeks for the Tigers,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but this
absolutely.
especially was pretty awesome. So we got a lot to digest tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, last time we talked, we previewed the series, and you thought you thought the Guardians were going to take it. I thought the Tigers would take it in two. I kind of thought they had to take it in two to win it, um, but they were able to get it done today. But let's go back, look at game one, Brian, and we got to talk about Tarek Skubal. I mean, what an unbelievable pitching performance! Probably, I would say, probably the greatest pitching performance I've seen from a Tiger in the playoffs. Which I never thought I would say that, because with Justin Verlander's
Mhm.
performance against Oakland back in 2012 in
Game
Game Five,
five.
when he had
Yep.
Game Five when he had the complete game shutout. I thought
Yep.
I would never see a performance better than that, but I think Scooble surpassed it in Game One.
You could argue that with the pressure and like it was different than with Verlander. Like even though the Tigers were on the road at that time, you still felt like they were the better team against Oakland, and they were a team that was everybody talked about still a legitimate a World Series caliber team. But just with the way the Tigers season has gone the last month, I really feel like game one was amplified, and that was like, I think we both, I mean, obviously it was must win because the Tigers lost game two, but like must win for a lot of reasons, and for him to do what he did, um I think we both kind of expected him to finish out the game. I guess would be the only um question mark, or not even staying on his performance, because there was nothing wrong with going 7 and 2/3 or whatever he did, and getting pulled. But yeah, special outing. I think what 1 or 2 balls got out of the infield. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
really, the way Cleveland has hit against him, maybe getting the ball out of the infield wasn't their strategy, right? Because it seemed like whenever they had a decent inning against him, it was when the ball didn't get out of the infield. But you're right, man. Just special performance and something really unforgettable. And you're watching that thinking, man, he's getting that 400 million from somebody. You know.
yeah, yeah. No question. It just seems like that contract is just going to getting more and more every time Scuba goes out to pitch. But that's something, fortunately, we can worry about down the road. I thought maybe that might be something we'd be discussing today, but thankfully it's not. We're going to be discussing more playoff games. But just going back to that game one, and even with the Scuba performance, you think, oh my God, they're gonna blow this, when Javi Baez makes that great play, but it bounces and
Yeah.
Tor can't pick it,
Mm.
and Jose Ramirez ends up on third with no outs. You're trying to save one run. And Will Vest, man, what a performance he had in that game to truly save that game. And Cleveland had a contact play on Jose Ramirez, gets caught between third and home. Well, the comebacker goes right to Vest, and he plays it just perfectly, tags out Ramirez, keeps the runner at first, ends up saving that game. So, I mean, what were you thinking, Brian, when Ramirez gets to third,
Yep.
right? And there's no outs. Are you just thinking, man, oh man, here we go again. They're going to
I
blow another great Scooble start, and this just the black magic of the Guardians is going to come through again.
With 100% certainty that I think they were going to score. Like there's no doubt in my
Yeah,
mind. And I'm actually kind of curious if the contact play was on, because there was nobody out, right? And so, that okay, if I don't have to go here and we're going to have 2 more chances to score this tying run. So it's either they did have it on, or Jose Ramirez, who best player in the series, still he's the best player on the
yeah,
field. He could have just made a mistake, but yes, I absolutely was thinking the same thing. And then we're going through that, watching it. You're thinking again about all the opportunities with runners in scoring position that seems to be a broken record for the last month, you start to think about those. But Will Vest too, a ton of credit for recognizing, understanding the situation and checking, Jose Ramirez. And
Yeah,
like people like don't like to give pitchers a lot of credit in this regard. Like, dude, he's still an athlete. Like, that's a pretty athletic play. That's not an easy play to pitch, have that strategy, pitch in and then being able to field your position. Obviously, you've seen numerous times pitchers not being great at fielding their position, but a lot of credit there. And then a lot of credit to have the wherewithal to not have the runner advance to second base, who hit the ball back to him. So it was so bang bang. And you felt it was weird. Like, you felt, like I said, I felt definitely they're scoring, no doubt. And then after that play, I'm like, nope, they're not scoring. They're winning
yeah,
this game. Flip just like
yeah.
that, which was wild.
Yeah, just a crazy play, and one of those examples where it's like, man, okay, maybe the brakes are going to start going the Tigers' way a little
Mhm.
bit, or at least it seemed like almost like the brakes started to even out a little bit. And they get game one, like I said, a phenomenal performance from Scoobel, an all-time great performance. And then we go into game two, and 1 for 15 with runners in scoring position, leave a franchise record 15 guys on. I believe they said there was the 129th playoff game in Tigers postseason history and the most they've ever left on base. And to leave 15 guys on base and only score one run, that's almost like impossible to do. And what an incredibly frustrating game that was. And Cleveland eventually broke through in the eighth inning and busted that game open and it ended up winning in a little bit of a rout. But obviously, it was incredibly close all throughout until that eighth inning.
Yeah, broken record. And how many times could we say the same thing over and over? Guys, put the ball in play, right? Less than 2 outs and runners in scoring position, or waiting for the big hit. And I was talking to somebody today about the Tigers in general, and this was a reminder, and we can talk about this later again. About, I'm sure it'll come up over the next few playoff games again. Not acquiring a bat at the deadline, not acquiring a veteran bat, but they're still a young team, right? Although maybe today, or really this series, maybe the Tigers do have that veteran bat who's kind of performed like he did the first half of the year, and Javier Baez, who was probably their, I mean, was certain their best hitter this series.
Yeah.
And that's something like, okay, if he's back to doing first half Javi things, we're feeling pretty good. But yeah, after yesterday, again, you knew it was going to be relatively close until the bottom of the eighth, and it was. It was a back and forth. And again, though, I was having bad vibes after that last night. I'm like, gosh, at what point do these guys figure it out? And give them credit, they did today.
Yeah, it finally broke through in the seventh inning. They get a 4-run seventh inning today, but kind of just want to stick on that game too a little bit because obviously that was going to be a huge thing that we were going to talk about today because there's so many storylines that came out of that game too. One of the biggest was Riley Green being pinch hit for. It was the seventh inning. It was still a 1-1 game at that point. You had runners on first and third, 1 out. Riley Green comes up. Cleveland brings out Heron from the bullpen, a left-hander, and they decides to pinch hit Riley Green for Jahmai Jones. It is very telling, and maybe it's something that will kind of go away now that they've won. Had they lost, it would have been the biggest story going into the offseason. Now maybe it gets washed away a little bit, but I want to stick on that for a minute, Brian, because to me, we were texting back and forth like, man, that is AJ Hinch kind of making a statement there that, hey, yeah, strikeouts do matter a whole hell of a lot, man, because I can't play you and we need a run desperately in this situation. And I can't trust you to put the ball in play because you strike out so much to the point where I'm going to pinch hit you for Jahmai Jones. Now, granted, Jahmai Jones has been hot. He was clutch down the stretch, but still, that's a guy that was spring training invitee. And Riley Green's supposed to be the face of your franchise, and he's getting pinched hit for this guy. I
I,
mean, what were your thoughts there, Brian?
I think, we've, like you said, we've gone back and forth with text messages about, in particular, Riley Green, right? And 24 years old, but man, there's a lot of players who at 24 years old, if they're the guy, they're the guy. And Bobby Witt Jr. doesn't get pinch hit for ever, right? Rafael Devers doesn't get pinch hit for. Like, those things just don't happen. And so I think it's very telling, right? I mean, the thing is with baseball, and you can go back historically, there's been so many teams that have not had quote unquote superstar talent in one World Series, right? It can be done. So that being said though, like I think it's telling where that's how they feel. Either I think it's telling because I don't think at 24, 25 years old, Riley Green is changing his swing, right? I think it's very hard for him to change who he is at this point in his career. So he is what he is. And if he is who he is, I think it's quite obvious the Tigers maybe it's not a long-term solution. And we've talked about that before, but yeah, extremely telling that didn't happen. And to his credit, he came back today and had 2 hits. He was
Yeah.
2 for 5, right? And so, that's not an easy thing to do, and, to his credit, he did. But yeah, extremely telling because you and I have talked about before about the Scott Harris philosophy and the Scott Harris way and how Riley Green in particular really doesn't fit the Scott Harris, philosophy of what he wants in a hitter, and so that was extremely telling. But, um, I mean, it didn't work out, right? But give AJ Hinch.
Well, it didn't work out because the umpire blew the
Well,
call.
for sure. Yep, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, let's look back on it a little bit because that was a huge at bat. It could have changed
Mhm.
the whole season,
It could
right?
have.
And
Yeah, it could have.
in so many ways, it could change this season, and it could change the whole trajectory of where this franchise goes forward. On the
Yep.
fact of what happened, that preceded it was Riley Green getting pinch hit, but the actual at bat, Jahmai Jones, he should have got ball 4. That ball was low.
And
It
you
was
could
clearly
argue,
low.
yeah, and this is the baseball thing. Like you could argue, and people will say that, like we've talked. I'm an ABS guy. Like I can't wait for that to be in place next year. I
Yeah.
was, kind of hoping it was going to be in place for the playoffs. But old school baseball people will tell you, like, hey man, anything close, you got to be protecting, right? Like you're a pro, like if it's close, like don't put it in the umpire's hands, right? And so yes, I mean, truth to both sides, right? He got
Yeah,
hosed,
to some degree, but that was at it was a 3-1 count when that ball came in.
yeah.
So he's thinking, okay, I drew a walk. Doesn't draw
Hmm.
the walk. So now it's a full count. Next pitch,
And he has
almost the
to
same
swing.
spot. He has to swing at it, and
Yeah,
he swings over the top of it.
yeah, yeah.
An umpire can't miss that call. It's not like it was like just on the black or just below. I
True,
mean, it was a good
true.
couple feet below the zone. Like you cannot miss that call in that situation.
It's true, and I can't stand it when you hear others say like, "Hey, well, the human element of the game." You know what? Get it right. So
Yeah,
I agree with you, and like you said, it could have been franchise altering. Like think of, I thought about this. Like if they lose today, think of the damage. Like uh, think of the damage. Like how do you go to Riley Green and then say, "Hey, man, you're still our franchise guy," but we're gonna pinch hit for you in certain situations, right? Like that doesn't happen. I still question, regardless of what happens. I mean, okay, this side of a World Series appearance, I still am going to be curious. Like we talked, I can't wait till we have a conversation about the off season and roster
yeah.
movement and things like that. I I still don't think Riley Green's a long term guy. So, but that's beside the point.
Something I found interesting, and it's funny because I had all these topics that I was set to go through if they had lost, and then they win. So it kind of changes the whole idea
Hmm.
what this podcast is going to be. But one of the big things I found interesting this morning is I heard a clip from Hinge's press conference where he was talking about Game 2, and they were asking him about pinch hitting Riley Green, and they asked him like, "Hey, you gonna have a conversation with him? Did you talk with him in the locker room?" And he's like, "Oh no, not really. If I see him tomorrow, maybe I'll talk to him, but I shouldn't need to. It's he knows what the deal is. Everybody knows that's how we run our team." Like, dude, no, like you have to have a conversation with your player. It should have happened to me.
So
If it didn't
I
happen in the clubhouse at that moment, it has to happen
yeah.
immediately after the
I,
game.
I thought that even I wondered because you got to know from a coaching and managerial perspective, like they have to think about that stuff ahead of time, right? They have an idea of who they're going to pinch hit for and when and what situation, so it wasn't a spur of the moment. AJ Hinch is just like, nah, Riley, you're not betting, right? That thought process had to be decided before the game. He and his staff that they're like, the situation happens, like no, we can't do this anymore. And so
I don't know, Brian. I feel like
I
that was a spur of the moment thing when you had so many times where you couldn't get the big hit and you desperately needed somebody to hit a fly ball. I really feel it was a
I
little bit
don't
of a spur of the
so
moment where he might have had it in his mind, but I don't think that was. I really don't think that was discussed. And I don't think it was discussed with Riley
Well,
Green
but
before the game that there was
okay,
a potential of that.
but the thing is though is okay, it's not just Riley Green who's affected and impacted by it. It's Jahmai Jones. So if Jahmai Jones mentally, like leading up to that at bat, that entire inning, isn't thinking he's going in, right? And then hey man, grab a bat, right? Like that
Well,
affects.
I'm sure he's always got to be thinking that especially as it gets later in the game,
But I don't. But
that
I
he could
don't think
potentially be going in. I don't
for
think he
Riley
thought he was
Green.
going in for Riley
No, that's
Green.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. In that moment for Riley Green, I have a hard time thinking he's like, hey, getting ready to go. This is my shot, But like, so that's where I have a hard time thinking that the conversation wasn't had, or the conversation was, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I
But I
mean, I
don't
would like
know.
to think it did, but the vibe that I'm
I'm
getting is what I was
well,
hearing from Hinch. It
I,
didn't sound like the
okay.
conversation ever was ever had, and it
And
didn't sound like he was planning on having it after.
so if that's the case, then I'm curious. And I mean, I'm sure we could look this up. Like, how often in his career has Riley Green been pinch hit for in those situations? Like, if he felt that like, all right, he's not going to be blindsided. This has happened before. You know what I mean? Then maybe
I
he
don't
didn't think it.
very rarely, especially
If
this
at all, I
season.
get okay. If at all, I guess. So like, if this is like very rarely, or maybe like the first. Okay, it's the first time in the last two playoff appearances he's been pinch hit for. So then, see, that's what I mean. I have a hard time thinking he didn't have the conversation.
I don't know, man.
I don't know either. I right, but I
It
have a
just
hard
the
time.
way he was talking in that press conference made me concerned a little bit, and it is
Yeah.
something that I wanted to bring up. Is like how Hinch handles a clubhouse. Like obviously how he handles strategy in game, and there was some things that came up to this series, but for the most part,
Hmm.
throughout his entire career, he's been one of the great
Yep.
strategists and in-game managers in baseball. But I always wondered about how he handles a clubhouse because you have the greatest collapse of all time. It makes you wonder, it makes you wonder if maybe his clubhouse management maybe ain't the best of managers in the league.
But we both know from a coaching perspective, like what a coach or what we see at a press conference or what we see outwardly, like we have no idea what's going on in those situations. I see a guy, at least when they win, has some fun celebrating with them. You know what I mean? Like he seems like a guy that the players
Yeah,
genuinely like to play for.
but you go back
Um,
to Houston and what was going on at
sure,
Houston and all that
sure.
stuff, and
How many
his
of those
claim was, "Well,
guys?
I tried to stop it, but
How
it's
many
like,
of those
dude, you
guys?
own the clubhouse. The clubhouse is yours. Like what goes on within the club, that's your
Yeah,
responsibility."
yeah,
And so that's always been a question in the back of my mind. And then to have the collapse happen,
yeah.
uh,
The
lose a
second, the
15 and a half
second
game
part
lead, you
The
wonder.
second, but the second, okay, devil's advocate, the second part to this though is like we just got done talking about how they're extremely flawed, especially their lineup, right? And their superstar player gets pinch hit for, and their number one pick first baseman's hitting below 240. Like we could go, all right, right there. You hit Winsell Perez third today. Like we could
Yeah,
go down the list, but guess what? He's the first manager since Jim Leland 2 years in a row. He's in the second round of the playoffs.
yeah, yeah. I
You know what
mean,
I
you can't
mean?
argue
So
that. You can't
no,
argue that.
so maybe that's even to his, hey man, like no, he's doing something right, right? Like they can't freaking score when it matters, but man, he's in the second round of the playoff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean
I mean,
it's
I agree. You could look at it both sides of it. It's just
hmm
still something, it's a little something that I wonder. And I'd be interested to hear what players had to say,
sure,
especially down the road, years down the
sure,
road. Like, what was he
sure,
like? Because you
yeah,
always hear
oh
about Jim
yeah,
Leland
for
and,
sure,
and players just rave about how great he was in the clubhouse and how he handled his players and how he handled the clubhouse. The questions with Jim Leland, I think, were always more the in-game management and
yep,
when to bring in relievers and those type of things. But how he handled the
yep,
clubhouse, he was regarded as one of the best ever. So
no
it's just
doubt,
kind of funny how they're almost polar opposites in that and how they're looked at. And obviously they're the best two managers that we've seen since Sparky Anderson. So
no
um,
doubt.
but yeah, so those were some topics that I wanted to get into if they had lost tonight, because there was going to be a whole different type of podcast. But they come in today and they end up getting this win. And I want to start off by giving Jack Flaherty his flowers, because he's been good Jack and bad Jack all season. Mr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde all year, and he comes in this game and really was lights out
Mhm.
for 4+ innings to really keep them in the game throughout.
I think, well, to that point, yeah, I agree, and I'm going to go back to Inge really quick. as well because it ties into Jack Flaherty. Like, man, he was managed. It felt like he was managing for his life. Like Jack Flaherty wasn't pitching bad at all, right? Fifth inning, though, he's pulled right after 4 2/3. Do you know what I mean? Like that
Yeah,
early,
I thought maybe he could
he
have gotten
he
one more
probably could
batter at least,
he
but
probably could have, but it obviously showed that like he wasn't. I mean, Hinch wasn't messing around. Like
yeah.
we're going through this now, and again, like we were texting a little bit. I forgot Ty Holton pitched a lot yesterday. Got a good inning. Like he's been awesome lately. Um, but for sure, like for Flaherty, and Casey Mize yesterday didn't pitch bad. Like like very very important that he had a good outing. Because he was the guy in the rotation who obviously had struggled the most this season. Flair, I mean, the guy, in my opinion, the guy we're relying on, right? I'm not talking about Charlie Morton
Yeah.
and Chris, yeah,
Of the big
of the
3,
big,
I mean, they got
yeah,
3
right,
starters
yep,
that they're relying on.
for sure.
Flaherty's obviously one of them.
So that's a very good sign. I mean, granted, Cleveland's lineup, I mean, they're fans and they're talk show podcasters, they're probably talking about the same type stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like they, other than Skubal, like it's hard to hit Skubal, but these last 2 games, I mean, they did well yesterday, but again, and they weren't exactly on fire this series. And so yeah, massive credit for Jack Flair. He's got to give him a lot of confidence going into Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another guy, Finnegan was huge in this series and really been huge since the deadline. And Scott Harris, obviously he's gotten a lot of flack for the lack of making big moves at the deadline, but you got to give him credit for getting Finnegan because he's one of the better relievers that was picked up at the deadline, and he's been lights out. He did get injured, and then it took him a little while to kind of get back in his groove, but he was awesome in this series.
If he was the only Scott Harris acquisition, I think people would say, yeah, it would have been nice to get another bat, I guess, right? But man, wow, awesome. What a great trade deadline we had. You know what I mean? It's because the other guys he got bombed.
Yeah,
Right?
but
Charlie
better off
Morton,
just not having him,
yeah, they're
not
better
having him
off.
at
They were
all.
better off. They probably finished with 90 wins if they don't acquire
Yeah,
either of those guys. And you just have bullpen chaos, chaos all the rest of the season. So yeah, massive credit for the Kyle Finnegan acquisition.
and then another guy I want to bring up, and it was an interesting move by Hinch in Game 2 was Troy Melton. I thought
Hmm.
he was one that we talked about when we previewed the series. I thought he was going to be a big X factor. Really didn't turn out to be that. Hinch brought him in when it was 1-1 in the 8th, and he kind of got
Yeah.
blown up. I mean,
Troy,
just didn't pitch well. But that's a lot to ask for a rookie in his first playoff appearance, and
absolutely.
it just didn't go well for him.
No, and you remember last year he did the same thing with Jackson Jobe in Houston.
So,
You
yep,
know what I mean? It wasn't his first, yeah, but I mean his first playoff appearance. Yeah, put him in a tough spot. So, in a way, it's hey, he's showing guys like, hey, if you've got the stuff, we're gonna play you. Regardless of your status or how long you've been in the majors. So, yeah, that was unfortunate, but like you said, it's tough spot for him to be in.
yeah. But
Mm.
I still think he's going to prove to be huge because he didn't pitch that much. He's probably going to be needed in Game 1. So let's go ahead, Brian, and obviously we can wrap up this series. Let's look ahead to Seattle now. As Detroit's going to go on to the ALDS. They go to Seattle. Game 1 will be on Saturday. Game 2 on Sunday. But with the quick turnaround, kind of puts them in a tough spot when you only got 3 true starters. None of them are going to be available on full rest come Saturday. So, big question of who will start Game 1. Brian, if the decision was in your hands, where do you think you would go with this?
Goodness. I mean, I think I had wrote down in my notes. I think the most important thing that came out of this past week is like the Tigers were able to set up their rotation for the Guardians, right? And remember we had talked about how the game on last Sunday really didn't matter. I mean, yes, it'd have been nice to have a AL Central Division banner. Yes, it would have been nice to at least say you're tied, whatever, right? But that was the important thing, setting up the rotation. Now, that's you
Now it's a
don't. I mean,
little bit. It's
it's
really just out
yeah,
of whack for Game 1.
it is. I mean, it's not going to be schooled at Game 1 because that's pitching on 4 days rest. He's not going to do that. But you're right. You mentioned a little bit. It might be Troy Melton being like an opener, right, and just
Yeah.
having that type of game at least for Saturday Game 1, and then you can go back to Scooble Mize Flaherty and be okay. So I it'll be interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting.
You could also put
Make
Ryder Montero
well,
is another
that's
option.
I think I can see both of those guys getting the bulk
Yeah,
of the early innings of game one anyway, and depending on how the game goes. Eh, I mean, Seattle's lineup's good, and they've
yeah,
right. I mean, obviously they probably have, in my opinion, should be the MVP in Cal Raleigh. So yeah, they're pretty good. So as long as Montero and Melton can hold the fort and keep them close for 5-6 innings, and the way the Tigers bullpen's been playing, have been pitching, you feel pretty good in a close game in the late innings. But I think to your point, that makes the most sense.
yeah. And man, a game one is it just feels like kind of like you kind of feel like you're going to lose that game because your
You,
pitching's not where you want it to be,
but
and you got Scoobel for game two. But man, if you can
yeah,
somehow find a way to
listen,
steal that one, holy cow, are you set up
ba-
for the rest of the series?
baseball's silly. Like the Mariners have been off for a while. You know what I mean? I mean, you
Yeah,
never know. They're going to be excited. Who knows how much their timing's off and whatnot. And so yeah, you can maybe the Tigers bats come alive, right? Even more so. Maybe this is something like, again, I'm not a big momentum guy, but I'm a big confidence guy. Like they've got to be feeling pretty good about, all right, see, like we did get big hits, when it mattered late in games. So I'm hoping and I'm banking that that's a thing, to be honest with you. Survive game one and go from there. Like you fully expect at the very least to be 1-1 coming out of Seattle.
yeah,
You full
yeah.
in my
Obviously,
opinion.
you got to take one. You got to get one.
Hmm.
And you're looking at the Scoopel starting game too is the one you
Hmm.
got to get. But this first one,
Man.
I mean, if you find a way to get it, holy cow. But
Hmm.
it does set up nicely after game one. It does set up nicely for them that you got Scoobel. You'll have Scoobel game two, Mize and Flaherty 3-4 in Detroit, and if it does go back to a game five, you would have Scoobel for game five. It sets up very similar to how the ALDS was last year. We had Scoobel in game two, and eventually you had him in game five against Cleveland last year. So um, you look at a 5-game series, potentially you're going to have 2 starts from Scoobel. You got to find a way to get another win. It's somewhere along the
Hmm.
line. So if we look back at the season series, Seattle did win the season series 4-2.
Hmm.
It was actually the second series of the year. Detroit went out to Seattle and took the first 2 of that series and should have swept them if Colt Keith doesn't have a error on
Yeah,
a double, what should have been an easy double play.
should have.
Ends up bobbling it, and then Detroit ends up losing that game 3-2. So should have really been a sweep in Seattle. And then Seattle comes back here to Comerica, the series before the All-Star break, and just puts a
Hammered
whooping
them.
on the Tigers. And that was the moment where it was a wake-up call, like, oh, maybe there's still a long season to go, and man, maybe Detroit isn't as good as we thought because they got smashed by Seattle right before the All-Star break, and it was Tigers' top 3 starters that got smashed. Scoobel, Mize, and Flaherty were the 3 starting pitchers in those games, and Scoobel actually went. Actually got it here. Scoobel went 5 innings, gave up 4 earned. That ended up being a 12-3 loss. I think that Seattle took it to Detroit's bullpen later in the game. Game 2 of that series, Seattle won 15-7, and Mize got smashed. Gave up 6 earned runs. Montero ended up coming in mop-up duty for 3 innings. He gave up 3 earned. And then the third game of the series, when Seattle swept, Flaherty actually pitched pretty well. 5 innings, 2 earned. That's when the wheels
Yeah,
started to come off for Canely, and he gave up 3 earned without getting it out.
yeah. So you know what
So
though? Like Jim Leland used to always say, "It's not who you play, it's when you play them." And I remember the Tigers were really scuffling then, just like they were for the last couple weeks. So, um, I mean, I think the Mariners their lineup's obviously definitely better than the Tigers lineup. I think the pitching because of Skubal does favor the Tigers a little bit. Um, so it'll be again going back to it like the game one situation, right? How to handle that. And we've talked about it before. Like clutch hitting is huge. And you mentioned Colt Keith. Like I wonder how this series would have played out if he was typical Colt Keith and he was healthy. Like your 260, 265 guy in the lineup. I wonder if the series plays out. I wonder if the Tigers hitting is any better. And I know the Tigers were scuffling even when he was in the lineup and healthy, but I think he's back for the Seattle series. I think that was the plan anyway, getting him back.
There's he's been working out. He was working out before the game today. He was throwing. Um, he looks like he could be close. I mean, I don't know if it's a for sure thing that he's going to be back, but he's definitely going to be in the conversation.
I think.
Um,
I mean, maybe I'm putting a lot of hope on Colt Keith to help the lineup, but like he's still a guy to again go back to it. He's not young anymore either, but developing as a hitter. I guess it's funny. I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth as much as I rail against Riley Green with you and others. Like Colt Keith is still in that age bracket, similar, but I give
young,
Colt
a couple
Keith.
years younger,
He
actually.
might
I
even
think
be
he's
young.
2023 maybe.
Yeah, yeah, he's still developing as a hitter, right? But like when
Yeah,
Colt Keith makes contact, man, it's nice. Like
yeah.
he's got a cool swing and he hits the ball hard. Like it'd be great if he's healthy and available
Well, he's one of the few, really the only guy that they put a lot of faith in by signing him long term before
early,
he ever even made his major league debut.
early.
They didn't
Yeah.
do that with Riley, and maybe they tried with Green and Torkelson. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
they got it done with Keith, and he's here for the long haul. So,
For
so
sure.
I went ahead and pulled this up. This was I got this off of one of the Seattle Mariners sites, and it just matches up like what the stats are for both teams. And this is for the full season, but I just found it interesting at how really evenly matched both teams are for throughout 162 games of the regular season. You look at their team averages 244 to 247, OPS 740 to 730, strikeout percentage 23.3, 23.9. I mean, ERA, pitching ERA, starting pitching ERA 3.97 to 3.91. I mean, whip 1.18, 1.21. I mean, it's almost dead even, these numbers. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Now, obviously, this is taking a look at the full season, and the big narrative of this series, I think, especially locally, is going to be the fact that Seattle went all in at the deadline
Yeah.
and the Tigers did not.
Yeah.
It's the fact that the Tigers really didn't do a whole lot. We talked about Finnegan. Finnegan was a big move, but other than that, they didn't really do a whole lot. And we talked about how we really wanted Suarez. We really wanted the Tigers to go get Suarez and get another power
Mm.
hitter and a veteran in the middle of that lineup. They didn't get him. Who did? Seattle, and now they got to go against them.
So that's like anything. Getting him is one thing. He wasn't exactly raking to start for them. I remember that when they acquired him, and so everything now it's all about the postseason, and we're here. And if he performs well this series, fans are gonna you're gonna again ratchet up the getting upset at Scott Harris and man Chris Ilitch, you cheapskate, and that sort of thing. But if he doesn't perform and the Tigers are able to keep him at bay, right? That's where we're gonna say, okay, like see,
Yeah.
so that you're right. That's a huge narrative, and they
It'll be
they also didn't they also trade for Naylor as well?
Naylor. Yeah,
Naylor is
Josh
another
Naylor.
one. Josh Naylor. Yep. So this is one of those. Hey, the Mariners really went for it, and they're gonna, you know, we're gonna see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna come down to the Tigers pitching against that lineup. It's a star-studded, power-filled lineup, and the Tigers, they gotta keep them in the ballpark, or if they're giving up home runs, they gotta be solo shots. They cannot
Yep.
give up the 2 and 3 run shots. They cannot walk guys and put guys on base for those power hitters to come up with guys in runners in scoring position. Like, if they're going to give up, they're going to get their home runs. They're going to they're
Mhm.
going to get their shots, but you need them to be limited. 1 run shots, 2 runs at the most. You cannot give up the 3 runs, the grand slams, the game ender type
Yep.
shots.
Yep. Yeah. I again, like this is the time of year, Dan, where I fully expect them to be close games again.
Yeah,
Right? I
I do
do.
too.
I do too. It's gonna be fun, low scoring games, and like for guys like us who are watching it, we're gonna be at the edge of our seat, or our wives who are like tuned in with their earbuds or whatever, and they're listening and tuning out the world. But it's gonna be fun. I mean, playoff baseball, October baseball is awesome, right? Like we like all sports, but God, there's something different about this because you just feel like everything is magnified. Have
I
we
feel like
gotten have
every pitch matters, and it's just, I mean, it's
for sure?
intense from beginning to end.
Have we gotten start times for the games yet? Because I'm curious what it's going to look like being in
I did
Seattle.
not see. I did not see Saturday, but interesting enough, Sunday is 8 o'clock, and the Lions are 4:30. So how
Oh,
awesome is that
that's
locally?
pretty
You're
fun.
gonna have the Lions going against the Bengals at 4:30, immediately followed by Tigers with Scooble on the mound in Seattle for game 2. So, man, what an
Awesome.
awesome day that's gonna be.
Awesome. Awesome. I agree. I agree. Fun time to be a Detroit sports fan. We keep talking about that. It's pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. All right,
And
are
then,
we
yeah,
is this prediction
I
time?
was just gonna say, but game 3 and game 4 are Tuesday and Wednesday back in Detroit. So if
Okay.
you're looking to get playoff tickets, I already got my tickets for game 4. I didn't
Let's
get to go to the wild
go.
card because
No.
obviously it was in Cleveland. But as
Let's
long as
go.
it goes at least 4, I'll be there.
Awesome. Now, what's the possible how many days in between? So obviously they're going to have
Just
the
Monday.
travel
They'll have the day
days.
off tomorrow, and then they'll have a day off Monday.
Do we uh, do we both think okay. All right, are you ready to
Yeah,
talk?
let's
Are
do
you
it.
ready for
Predictions, you go
Okay.
first.
All right. I'm not gonna I'll go out on a limb, but I'm not gonna start that way. So I think either Seattle's gonna win it in 3 or it's going 5. And
Well,
I
if it
think
goes 5, Tigers are winning.
I
You
think if
get
it goes
Scooble in game
5, the
5.
Tiger I'm gonna say it's going 5 and the Tigers are winning because you get 2
Wow.
Scooble starts. I'm going the Tigers. It's going 5 and the Tigers are winning.
So you had them this series against Guardians have
I did. I
instilled
still
some
think
confidence in you.
well, yeah, it did. And I think I'm a big Colt Keith fan. They're gonna get him back. I do. I think the Tigers will win it in 5.
I think this is going to come down to game 4. I think it's going to go to game 4. This Seattle's going to be up 2-1. Whoever wins that game
Mm.
will end up winning the series, but I think Seattle's going to take that game and Seattle's going to take it in 4. That's kind of how I felt before the playoffs. Before the Guardians series even happened, I thought the Tigers were going to get the Guardians and then go to Seattle and lose in 4. And I'm not going to change my prediction now. I think Seattle's just a better team. I think
Were
they
the
had a better
Mariners
team even before
okay?
the deadline, and I think they did a lot more than the Tigers at the deadline. I just think they're the better team.
So I know again this isn't something it's hard to quantify, but were the Mariners a playoff team a year ago? Like how many of those guys have been in playoff situations? How are they going to be able to handle it? And
I mean,
you never know
Suarez
with
and Naylor, the guys that they got,
yeah, I
are
guess. What about any of those pitchers? I
proven
mean,
playoff
I
guys.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Well, the crazy part, this is going to be hard for
Yeah.
me is game 5. If it gets that far, is on a Friday night. And I'm going to be working a high school football game, which is cool, so I'll be the guy with the earbuds in watching high school football, listening to the Tigers. But,
Oh, yeah.
um, right, yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. Exciting though. Yeah, exciting. Either way, like, okay, let me ask you this then
Well, that
before
could be depending on what the other game is that day. If there's another game 5 on that Friday, they're in Seattle.
Mhm.
Could be a late night start.
It could be. That's fair. It could be.
Maybe everybody will be home for it.
So let me ask you this. You know, before you could say before the season, you can say All-Star break, you can say end of the season. Tigers are in round 2 again for the second year in a row. They've won a playoff series for 2 years in a row. Successful season?
Man, that's a tough question because it depends on it depends on your total outlook of the franchise, I think. Really be honest with
I
you. Because
think
my thing was I thought they should have gone all in for this season and next season with Scooble and try to win it all. And it does not feel like they've gone all in at all. It does not feel like they've gone all in. It feels like they're still kind of just piecing things together and preparing for the future and getting ready for the star prospects to come up to combine with what they got, which I never understood because you have Scooble. And I think we all know or have a pretty good idea that he's not going to be back, that he's not going to sign a long-term extension. So why wouldn't you go all out for the last 2 years?
I get
And so it's a tough thing to say, is it a successful season or not if they lose? Because if they went all in and then lost in the second round, I would say it was probably a failure because
failure.
they went all in to try to win it, but they didn't go all in. So
I
I don't
think
know
it's
if you could say it's a failure. I think they're going to be exactly where they should be based on the moves that they made.
I think it's a second year of success regardless. Because again, in baseball, it's such a finicky sport. There's no guarantees. And you can say that in other sports, but like upsets in baseball aren't rare. right? So I still think about the 2006 Tigers against the Cardinals. The Tigers were the way better team. St. Louis had like 83 wins that year. You know what I'm saying? And they just played well down the stretch. And the Tigers threw games away. And it's just a finicky game and matchups and pitching and all that silliness where you can't control all that. And so again, if Scott Harris, I'm curious after the season what his press conference will be like, regardless of when the season ends, and how he talks about how, long term, look at all this talent in the minors, look at all these championships we're winning. Like, we're going to be a stable, competitive organization for the next 10 years. It's hard to say that's not a success. Like, I have a hard time thinking, I guess at some point, maybe this happens too. If we both agree Scooble isn't gonna sign with the Tigers. Like, maybe next year their mindset isn't, okay, we're gonna trade him July 31st. Maybe this offseason is the year they wanted to go for it. Right. Or maybe this offseason is the time
I
they're gonna
hope
go
so,
for it. Like, instead
because
of
it's
this
pretty clear
past
what they need. It's
for
pretty clear
sure.
what they need, right?
For
Middle
sure.
of the lineup, consistent professional hitters.
For sure. Maybe Suarez wasn't the type of hitter they wanted to trade for. Maybe it's somebody else this offseason,
Maybe it's a guy like Bo Bichette,
Maybe it's a guy like Bo Bichette.
a low
He's the
strikeout, high
obvious one.
average
Sure.
guy.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be, I think, one of my favorite parts about sports, and especially baseball, is the hot stove league, the offseason. I
Oh, I love
love
it. This is gonna
MLB.
be one of the most
Yes.
fascinating
It's
off
gonna be a
seasons
fun one.
I think we've ever
Since
had.
since Dombrowski was the GM, for
Since
sure. Like,
Nebraska, but I
when
think this is
he
even more fascinating because of the Scoople situation, because of the Riley Green situation, which was,
well,
we talked about maybe
I
washed
just
down a little bit, but it's still
Well,
going
do
to
you
be an
remember?
issue.
Well, do you remember though with Dombrowski? It was every year you knew something was going to happen.
Yeah, they were in
Sheffield
on the top
early
guys,
on, yeah,
all the top guys
Sheffield,
they were in on.
Pudge,
Yeah.
Victor
Victor Martinez.
Martinez, like right, the closers, Jose Valverde. Like, I mean, just down, like, you just knew like something big was going to happen. That hasn't that and that I haven't had that. We haven't had that off season in a while.
Oh, you can't say that. They were in on Alex Bregman all the way to the end.
But okay,
It,
yeah,
it
okay.
was it was
I
kind of
guess
like, I mean, I know it wasn't as because
yes,
he
I
didn't
agree.
make the
Okay,
signing,
fine. Yeah.
but they were in on it.
But were they in on anybody else that you were like, "Oh, man." I guess
They
I
put all
always
their
felt
eggs
with
in that
them.
basket.
They did. I guess I always felt with Dombrowski, man. It was like, "Oof, he's going for this," you
Yeah,
know? So, it's gonna be fun. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So the winter meetings, like, right after, Christmas and the first of the year is a pretty fun time.
it's going to be
Yeah, at least
exciting,
I think
but
that's when
not
the
as
winter meetings
exciting
are.
as this coming up series is going to be this
No,
weekend. And man, we get at least 3 more playoff games, hopefully more,
yeah.
um, going forward. So
And
incredibly
again,
exciting time.
home games. You get some home
I've got
playoff,
home
and
game,
you
at
and
least
you
one
get
home
to
game.
go.
Hopefully
That's
two.
awesome.
Hopefully two. As long
Hopefully
as they don't get
2.
swept. It would be just my luck they actually sweep Seattle. Be like, oh,
Right.
I don't get that. I'm like, yeah, bittersweet. Yeah, but
That would be
they're
something.
winning. They're winning game 3, and I'm like, I wanted to win, but kind
Right?
of,
No, that's
yeah, I
great.
don't know.
That's too funny.
So,
That's too funny. Good stuff, Dan, as always.
all right, man. So before we sign off, we've talked the last couple times. We never get a chance to talk college football. It feels like
We
it's just
don't.
constantly on the back
No,
burner.
we
So
don't.
let's take a few minutes here before we sign off.
Yeah,
Let's kind
absolutely.
of get into Michigan football a little bit. The last time we really talked about Michigan was back at the first live show we did
Hmm.
at Buffalo Wild Wings several weeks ago, and we reviewed the Oklahoma game. And I talked a
Yep.
lot about how I thought the biggest thing I needed to see from Michigan was Underwood to get more involved in the run game. And it was the very next game we saw him get running touchdowns against Central Michigan. It was heavily involved in the run game and has been heavily involved in the run game since that point. And Michigan has started to get on a roll here and had the huge win against Nebraska 2 weeks ago on the road. A huge road victory where Michigan really, they looked like the better team throughout. And, they kind of did some stupid things, had some personal fouls, did some things that kept Nebraska in that game. But Michigan definitely looked like the better team. And they look like, they look like a playoff caliber team right now, even with and Underwood being a freshman quarterback.
It depends. You're right. It depends on how I think the rest of college football shakes out with the number of losses that Michigan has. So looking at their schedule, I think the 2 games where I would say they're probably not favored, or if they're favored, it's not by a lot, is going out to USC. And I'm not saying USC is some juggernaut, but we talked about it with Michigan State having to go out
Mhm.
there is not going to be easy,
It's
right?
tough.
And then Ohio State. Like, other than that, Michigan, should be is going to be the favorite in every other game on their schedule. The Michigan or the game at Nebraska was a tough test because it's not like Nebraska isn't world beaters, but they're still Matt Rule is a good football coach, and it's still going
Yeah.
to Nebraska and not an easy place to play. And you're a freshman, freshman quarterback. We talked about that. So um, it's gonna come down to, in my opinion. So let's say they lose both those games, USC and Ohio State. And I'm not saying they will, but that puts you at 3 losses, probably doesn't get you in the playoff. Um, but it's you win those games, and especially you win that last one, the dynamic changes a lot, and um, it's very possible they're a playoff team.
Yeah, and we'd have to see how it shakes out. Alabama had 3 losses last year. Was very close to getting in. It was a highly debated whether
Mhm.
they would get in or not. They eventually did not get in. Um, but it depends on where teams shake out.
Yep.
It's tough though because Michigan's not going to have any one of those top victories. If they lose to USC and then lose to Ohio State, they're not going to really have any marquee wins. I
No.
guess the Nebraska win, but you wouldn't call it a marquee win.
Mm-mm.
It'd be the 3 marquee games, especially the top 2, Oklahoma and Ohio State. If
I
those are both losses, it'd be hard to put them in with 3
Dan,
losses, I
I
think.
well, I think there's a possibility that even if they go out to USC and lose, if they beat Ohio State, and that puts them at what,
Yeah, 2 losses
11
with
and
a win
two,
over Ohio
they're
State. Now
in.
that's
They'd
that's
be in.
totally
They'd be
different,
in. Because
which would
then,
be actually kind of nice to have that game actually matter.
yeah, because then it would be, then you're
It would matter to get in the playoffs.
right, right. Well, then you're talking then a potential Big Ten championship too. So then you might add another
Yeah.
game where you could get a marquee win, um, in that regard too. So to me, it's those are the two. And then I say that and watch them stumble against Wisconsin this Saturday, but Wisconsin's going through their
I
own
don't think
issues,
yeah,
and
I don't think
I don't either,
Wisconsin's got
which which is
anything to
wild.
offer him, honestly.
Which is wild considering Luke Fickell is widely
That
considered to
yeah, I
be a
wanted to
pretty
get
good
into that a little
coach,
bit with
but
you. Yeah, I
mhm,
wanted to get in that a little with you, Brian, because that was an interesting hire to bring him
mhm,
in, and just an interesting approach from Luke Fickell because they've really kind of gotten away what has made Wisconsin, and that's
yeah,
getting the top offensive lineman in the country, just
yeah.
playing power football, smash football up there in the north, and they kind of gotten away with that, trying to be a little bit more of a spread offense and getting away from what made Wisconsin. That's really tough to do, to change your identity. We saw it happen with Michigan with Rich Rod, and it didn't work out. Now, there's a lot of other things that
Yep.
factored into that as well.
Yep.
But changing the identity of what you've been for decades, um, it's really difficult to do, and it's also the fan.
Oh, Dan, you're frozen. Uh-oh. Oh, Dan, I lost you. Let me text you. Are you
Are you
there?
back
You're
on there,
back.
Brian?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got you.
You
That's
gotcha.
weird.
That was weird. That was weird. You were talking about Wisconsin and getting away from, their identity and who they are. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
Just
Luke
what did you think about Luke
Fickle,
Fickle, and just them
well,
getting away from what they are?
there was a time like Luke Fickle when he was in the Final Four or the playoff at Cincinnati, like he could have probably had his choice of a lot of jobs. And
Yeah.
so going to
Well, he was
Wisconsin,
close to taking the state job, if you
he was close
remember.
to taking the state job. Like, and
I
for
think his wife
me,
didn't want to go or
yeah,
something
right,
along those lines.
yeah, and for me, that was shocking that he would go to Wisconsin, and less like, but like, you know, there's a lot of money involved, right? There's a lot of quality of life, like all that stuff when it comes to it for coaches. But no, there is definitely like when you get away from stuff that's worked, and Gary Anderson at one point was at Wisconsin as well, and he got away from a little bit from what Barry Alvarez established, and he struggled and didn't stay the whole time. So it's not unique to Wisconsin or Luke Fickle, but yeah, it's hard for, again, Luke Fickle had to know going into that, and Wisconsin had to know, like, hey, this is who I am. Here's what we're gonna do, and they hired him anyway. You know what I mean? And sometimes sometimes it works, and sometimes schools and programs need to change. But I never felt like I remember growing up when Wisconsin was bad, right? Like, it was a little bit before you, but like they were bad, and Barry Alvarez made them good with those things that you talked about: big, strong, just offensive linemen ground the ball, ground and pound. Ron Dane, Brett Moss, like all those type of running backs, and so yeah, shocking a little bit. And they lost to Alabama, and that okay, you can understand that. Okay, it's still Alabama, and then they came home and lost to Maryland, and Mike Loxley's done a great job at Maryland, but you're still just like, wow. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, so they'll be coached up and ready. But yeah, it could get ugly in Madison, Wisconsin, really, really fast.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, I could be wrong. I mean, it's Big Ten, it's college football, anything can happen. It's 18 to 22-year-olds. But Michigan had the bye week last week as well, so
Mm-hmm.
they had two
Yep,
weeks to prepare, and I think this one could get ugly. I
for
do,
sure.
and I think
Yep,
it could get ugly. Yeah, I think it could get ugly. So
I agree.
we'll see. But we talked about USC and Ohio State
Mm-hmm.
being two of the big games for Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to discredit Michigan State. I
No,
think
ye-
it going to Michigan State. We've seen it so many times throughout the years. Even when Michigan has the better team, that Michigan State can jump up and bite them.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That's happened. And this seems to be like one of those years where like through the D'Antonio years at Michigan State, like Michigan State, you could argue like their caliber of player was up to par, or some of those years was just better than what Michigan was getting at the time. But that's not the case, at least the last 5, 6 years, and definitely not this year. But you're right. You never know in a rivalry game, and I probably looked past them too quickly. But yeah, that'll be fun. I still think Michigan's better. That game. I still would.
Yeah,
I think Michigan's at least a touchdown favor that game, if not more.
yeah. I would
Hmm.
assume they'd probably be two-score favorite, maybe a 10-point
Just
favorite.
probably. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That would
but
make sense.
we'll see when we get there. I think it's gonna be an exciting game though when
Well,
this
is
goes
that
down. And
game?
I think Michigan State's far better than they've been last couple of years.
I agree, and that's the thing with the transfer portal, which is crazy. Like, yeah, like Michigan State's got a little bit more depth, especially on defense. We keep hearing about. What is that game in East Lansing, or is that going to be in Ann Arbor this year?
That game, I believe, is in Michigan State this year.
Oh, okay, so yeah, those people. If Michigan State, let's see, so they had the USC loss now, and Michigan State goes to Nebraska. Like, if Michigan State can get to, I'm gonna look at their schedule. If Michigan State has one loss going into that game, okay, they're feeling pretty good too. Like, well, let's see. They have to go to Nebraska. Tough one. They should beat UCLA at home, and Michigan State has to play at Indiana before they play Michigan. So that's going to be one of
That's
those kids are probably looking ahead to Michigan. And Indiana
I
is
don't know
good
if they'll be
and
looking
good.
ahead though. Indiana's a top 10 team right now.
Well, I know they are. I'm
They
not
might
saying
not be
that's
looking
not a
ahead
well. I think they're looking ahead just because it's still
just because it's Michigan. I
Michigan,
mean, you
so they'll
got a
be
top
looking up.
10 team
Of course,
in front of you.
of course, yeah, of course. I could see it being a situation where that game against Indiana is not close, but then okay, we're gearing up for Michigan and we'll be ready. So, I
And,
still,
and real quick, I want to ask you about Indiana too, because a lot of
Mhm,
people thought Indiana was going to fall off. That it was a situation where they got all these transfers from the transfer
mhm,
portal, and it was just kind of a
mhm.
first year wonder type of thing with Signetti. But man, they're right back at it, and man, just put a whooping on Illinois. Holy cow! That
I,
was one of more the shocking scores of this season.
I think they look better this year than they did a year ago,
I do
to be
too.
honest with you, which is kind of scary. And they've got a week from Saturday. They have to go out to Eugene, Oregon. Like, that'll be an awesome
Yeah,
game,
that
and
is
which is
that is
crazy.
going to
Again,
be a
how
crazy game.
how much college football has changed. And like when I was a kid, if you was said Indiana at Oregon would have been a huge Big Ten game, I'd be like,
Yeah,
what does that mean? But anyway,
yeah.
um,
What has happened?
and give Indiana credit here. They put the whooping on Illinois, and then they followed that. Like, you're gonna have a letdown. They had to go to Iowa, and they won at Iowa. And I
Yeah.
mean, again, Iowa's is a middle of the tier Big Ten team right
Yeah,
now, but
anytime you
still,
go to Iowa and get a win,
of
I don't care what the
course,
score
right?
is.
Yeah.
That's a good
Again,
quality
the
win.
up the up down nature and the emotional ups and downs of college football is a real thing, and so that was a good win. To me, that's as good as win as smoking Illinois, for the Hoosiers.
I would agree, but that just
Mm.
the score of it, because
Mhm.
Illinois was looked at as being one of the
Of
better teams in the Big Ten.
no question.
Oof,
Yep,
man,
no question. I
man.
know. No question. So, I agree with you. I agree.
And we'll leave it at this, Brian. But I just want to get your kind of prediction for the Big Ten going forward. Where do you kind of see things? ending up. Obviously, we had the big Oregon Penn State game last week that was just an absolute thriller that Oregon was able to win in double overtime. And Ohio State obviously continues to roll as the number one team in the country. But when all is said and done, where do you kind of see things ending up here in the Big Ten?
You mean we can't have some fun and like everybody else and talk about how James Franklin still can't win big games? It seems
Just
like
can't
at
win the
Penn
big game.
State, what a tough business, right? And we know about it
Yeah.
better than anybody, man. There's a lot of coaches and programs that would love to be Penn State right now, and but he just
Yeah.
can't, put
Can't get
those.
that one big
No, that
win.
like that statement win that they talk about,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and again, he was a semifinalist in the playoffs, like maybe
I know. They're
that's
always right up there.
God,
10, 11 wins every year.
which is
Top 10
just
program every
yeah,
year. You
which
just
is
cannot get that one. It
crazy.
just needs that
Nope.
one.
I know, which is crazy. In a lot of ways, almost just to to satisfy his fan base, and
Yeah.
the people at Penn State more than anything, because they all, I think look at him like that, right? And
It feels
whatever
very much like Harbaugh pre
it does,
2021.
it definitely
Until he
does.
finally got that win over Ohio State. He was
I
always looked at you can't win
I
the big
agree
one, you can't beat
because
your
do you
rival.
remember that year we were there? He lost to Michigan State.
Michigan State,
In the
yeah.
Mel Tucker, do you remember
They
the
blew a
Kenneth Walker
16-point lead, yeah.
they did, and if that touchdown that Aiden Hutchinson scored in the end zone doesn't get overturned, like maybe Michigan's undefeated 2 years in a row going into the playoff, right? But you're right though, like they even to that point they still didn't. I still think it's Ohio State's to lose, although me, Dan. I'm a huge quarterback guy, and I think Oregon has the best quarterback
Yeah.
in the Big Ten. I do. Or who did I? Oregon, right? I said, yeah, Dante Moore. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. And so, if I had to guess how many playoff teams are coming out of the Big Ten, I think, man, I think Ohio State and Oregon they're both playoff teams
I
again.
think
I
Penn
think it's
State. And
so.
you got then you got to look at
Well,
Indiana and
Indiana.
Michigan.
Indiana got hurt last year by their schedule. Remember. So looking at Penn State's schedule, what Penn State still has
They
to
still
play
got
Ohio
Ohio State
State.
on the
They still have
schedule.
to play Indiana. Yep. So they have two more opportunities, right, to get that signature win. Um, if they split those two losses, is Penn State in?
I think they could.
Probably, like depending on how the rest of the country, plays out. So Penn State. So we're looking at. I said Oregon and Ohio State. I think for sure. Penn State potentially, and then let me look at Indiana. The rest of their schedule. Like,
You said what Indiana's got Oregon and Penn State. They're probably gonna have to win one of those.
let me see. Let me
I
see.
would think.
Indiana now. The Oregon, and Penn State. Yep, both on
And
the
that's
road.
it though, right? They don't really have
That's
anybody
it.
else.
Correct.
So they could
So
lose
if
both of those and be a two-loss team. Then you're
they're
gonna have the
not,
conversation, and they're gonna be
they're
hurt
not,
by what
they're
last year
not.
because they
Yeah,
didn't perform well in their playoff game.
they're not getting in. They're not getting in if they lose those two games. I don't think. Now if they split, right? Because one of those is on the road.
Cool. Let's
eh,
say Michigan. I mean, this is all. I don't like playing this game all that much when you play it in
Yeah.
the hypotheticals, but
Yep.
Let's say Michigan and Indiana are both 10-2. Let's say Michigan does get the USC win, but they lose to Ohio State. That's pretty
Woof.
clear. Michigan's getting over Indiana, pretty obviously. So let's say those are your four: Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. Indiana at a two loss team, they don't get in.
You probably don't get in.
I don't see how they could get in. They're not
They
going to
don't.
have any
They
real
don't
market
have
wins.
a.
How the blowout if Illinois continues to play
So
well,
this is where,
you can
yeah,
say,
this is
"Hey, we got the
you.
blowout win over Illinois," but that's really about it.
So this is where people like this is where the subjectivity of college football is a problem. So they beat Illinois, and at the time Illinois was ranked 9, right? So you look at it that way, you're like, oh, that's a pretty good win. But Illinois is going to be a different team at the end of the year than they are now, right? And so Illinois still has to play Ohio State. They still have to. That actually, Ohio State is really should be Illinois'. God, I'm saying like they might only have 2 losses this year.
Yeah, you might have a
So
ton of
today,
two-loss Big Ten teams.
you might, but a lot changes, between now and the final week of the regular season. Injuries, just natural wear and tear. Depth is an issue, so yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It is okay. So we talk a lot on our other podcast that we're going to
Mhm.
get going here again pretty soon. The College Football Russia Show. We always talk about how it used to be better because the regular season games used to
Yep.
matter, and you do one loss would hurt, it would kind of kill your season, especially if you were 2 losses, you were done. But now you get almost more meaningful games. You don't get as many as the huge everything on the line regular season games, but you get more meaningful games
I
because you can potentially make the playoffs as a 2-loss team.
I would say to a degree, but just because you make the playoffs doesn't mean you're a national championship team, and that bothers me. Like teams are, hey, okay, we're a playoff team. Like, oh, we might have a shot. And I know the fans will tell you, well, it happens in college basketball, but college football is different. Like, and you saw it a year ago. Like, I'm sorry, the Boise States of the world or the teams that are physical. It's a physical game,
Oh,
not like
Indiana.
not
I
like
mean, Indiana's
basketball.
prime example.
Right? Like if you're it is very hard for a Cinderella. Everybody
Yeah.
the whole thing is, "Oh, Cinderella, these games matter. Just get into the dance. Anything can happen." Probably not, right? Even this isn't the NFL either, because people argue like, oh, well, the last wild card team has won a Super Bowl. Yeah, but those are still NFL rosters, grown men with a salary cap and a salary floor, right? Where they're all pretty close. Like college football is still like, man, you've got like depth is an issue at even the really good programs. Like look at Ohio State's offensive line against Michigan last year, right? Because they didn't have a ton of depth there. And then those guys got healthy and really helped them go on that run, right? So it
Yeah,
happens even at the
well, yeah. Well, you look at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, just
destroyed them. Yeah,
dominated that game.
destroyed. Yeah, they were yeah. And so like that's a thing. So I agree with you. Yes, it's like, yeah, you getting in would be pretty cool and we can, hey, we can go recruit and say, hey, we're a playoff team, come be a part of this. But yes, to that degree, I agree. Yes, I agree.
It brings more teams to the party,
For sure.
which a lot of people wanted. We argue the other way that you'd
Yep.
rather have, where the best of the best are getting
Yep.
in because you brought up a good point. Like the Indianas they had no business being in the playoffs. The SMU's did no business.
No. Boise State, no business.
If we could argue Boise State, I would. They've been a pretty good program for a while.
That's
I know
great.
up front maybe they don't have
That's
the
great.
horses that the top programs can be, but they've had some big wins against some big schools.
So,
Like,
but
it's not like
even
they're out of nowhere.
no, but again, even though no, I do believe in this, and you and I have coached before, and okay, I get it, it's a little bit different in high school, but hear me out here. Like when you don't see the physicality of the SEC or the Big Ten, right, every week in college football, it's a lot easier to pull off that one game upset
One
occasionally,
game as opposed
right?
to four.
As opposed to 4
4 in a row.
in a row when like 2 of them you gotta go on the road and you gotta go to Baton Rouge 1 week and Tuscaloosa 2 weeks later. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And so people use that comparison a lot, and that drives me nuts. But yeah, it is what it is.
It was one thing for
I'm in
Boise
the
State to get. Yeah, one thing for Boise State to
so
get Oklahoma once with a bunch of trick
totally,
plays at the end, and
totally. And
that.
again,
But for them to
play
but to have them do 3 more times after that,
totally.
it's almost impossible.
Almost impossible. Yeah, you can't ever say anything's impossible, but that's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. This was
well,
fun,
I didn't
man.
get your answer really though. We kind of we talked about
Oh,
what teams are going to be playoffs, but what team do you think is going to end up actually winning the Big Ten?
Ohio State.
You think Ohio State? You think
I
Ohio
do.
State's gonna
I do. But for them, it's still about like it's so amazing to me, even at the college and pro level, sometimes how coaches can overthink stuff. And we talked about this, like against Michigan, it almost felt like they had to. No, we are tough, right? Hey, take this, Lou Holtz, right? Remember from that interview at the end of the game? Right, we are tough, and like they just ran. And then it's like no, and then they go into playoffs, and that playoff run was against some really good teams.
Oh, yeah.
They just aired it out and dominated the heck about it. So like stop, like I still am surprised by that. So that's still a weird mental thing. But again, even if they lose that game and go 11-1, they're a playoff team. And
Yeah.
it doesn't in that game theoretically doesn't matter. I know everybody will say it does,
It
but
doesn't.
it
What's
doesn't.
crazy? What's crazy is we could get it this year.
Mhm.
If Michigan beats USC, like you said, they're probably favored in the rest of their games into Ohio State.
Both of those teams are probably
Let's say Michigan beats Ohio State. They're rematching.
They're both in
championship game. They're
Yeah, and
rematching the
then
Big Ten championship game
and
the very
theoretically
next week.
a month later in the playoffs. Like, who knows? Like, it's
Potentially a month
so
later.
I'm
You could
not a
get 3 Michigan Ohio State games. It's
stupid.
possible.
Not a fan. Like, and everybody, well, it happens in college basketball all the time with North Carolina and Duke or Michigan State and back. But you know what? Nobody remembers those regular season results. Nobody remembers all those. All they remember is the end, right? And that's what makes college football special. You remember all those regular season games because they meant so much.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
they don't.
That's
They
different.
won't.
We're not
If
going
they,
to have that anymore.
nope,
You're not going
nope.
to have that anymore with the fact that you can probably get in if you have 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
So,
different world now.
so
It's a
how about
different world.
so how about that? That would be a fun podcast and conversation to have. Michigan Ohio State game. No matter what the outcome, they're both rematching in the Big Ten title game.
Next week. Do you the question, the big podcasting debate or big topic? Do you rest Bryce Underwood for the Michigan Ohio State game so he's
So
ready for the Big
of
Ten
course,
championship?
of course, nobody's gonna. But like, which game's more important?
Yeah, the Big Ten
Of
championship
course.
game. Oh man, those
Wild.
are. It may not happen this year, but it's gonna happen.
Which
It's gonna happen, and
ugh.
maybe it's not Michigan Ohio State. Maybe it's a couple other teams, but I think that the
The
story
rematch
will
is.
be the biggest when it is the Michigan Ohio
So
State. They
do
can play
you
back to back weeks and potentially a third time
so
in the
it
playoffs.
hasn't I'm trying to think when it's happened. So when it's happened recently, because I remember Florida State, there was a year we talked about that might have been the game, the retro show, one of the games we talked about where they rematched in the Sugar Bowl and Florida beat Florida State. And in the regular season, Florida State beat Florida. And so Florida claimed the national championship.
Yeah,
And then the most recent one I can think of where there was a ton of controversy was, remember the Alabama LSU national championship game, the BCS game, right? In the sugar or in New Orleans, and LSU won in the regular season on a last second field goal, and then Alabama shuts them out. There was a massive outcry. The BCS sucks. We got to get rid of it. We need a playoff. If there's a rematch in any form where it's got like stuff like that, sorry, I feel like it's not going to be as people aren't gonna be happy. It's gonna suck. It's just gonna
the
suck.
second game just doesn't. It's not as
No,
it just doesn't have the build. Like because
no,
you already had the build, you already had so
correct,
much emotion leading up to it.
correct.
Michigan Ohio State has always been about that. It's been the one day on the calendar that you circle. I mean, if you're a
Yep.
Michigan fan or an Ohio State fan, you circle that game and you
So,
look forward to it all year.
and
It
here's
doesn't mean
listen.
anything
No,
anymore.
well, here's the funny thing, and this is where you know me, I'm kind of a good troll when it comes to the Michigan State, Ohio State stuff. Here's what I tell Michigan fans that talk to me. For the longest time, Michigan basketball fans used to always just say, "What? Oh, the regular season doesn't matter. Just wait till the tournament." And it's true. Like, Michigan State won a couple Big Ten championships, and Michigan was the Final Four and played in the final game a couple times, right? Okay, then Ohio State can say the same thing in football last year, or anybody can say the same thing. You're right. The regular season doesn't matter. We're just preparing
That's
for the
where it hit. That's
playoffs.
where it hit me square in the face.
Mm-hmm.
When Michigan beat Ohio State, Michigan was down this year or last
Yep.
year, I should say, and but Michigan got him. That was like always like
Of course.
where their team was, but it was more Michigan. They had the opportunity if they had a down year, they had an opportunity to stop Ohio State
Mm-hmm.
from winning a national championship, and any other year before the playoffs, that would have been the case.
Awesome.
And potentially Ryan Day gets fired.
Ryan Day doesn't have a job.
Ryan Wiley gets fired.
Yep.
If there's no playoffs,
he doesn't go. He doesn't
they
win
go on the national. They go on this run and win the national title.
I can't. I'm curious. I mean, Harbaugh didn't get fired. Like, when was the last time? How often in this rivalry do coaches survive losing 4 in a row? You know what I mean? Like, it's.
Oh, I mean, if Harbaugh doesn't win in 21, I think it's
Yes.
over. I
No
mean,
doubt.
they turned around the program. We could have a very long podcast of how and why they turned around, but
Yeah.
they did in 21.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that changed everything. But if he had lost in 21, and if that team,
Agreed.
say that team had a couple of losses going into that game, he was done. He
Agreed.
was almost done anyways.
Agreed.
But if he had lost that game, he would have been done 6 in a row to Ohio State. There's no way.
I think JJ McCarthy was the most important recruit that he had there, because everything was about, man, you're the quarterback whisperer, you're the quarterback developer, and the quarterbacks were not playing at an elite level. And
say he was the most important recruit since Charles Woodson.
100%. 100%. Yep. Agreed.
Well, we can leave it at that, Brian. We went over a little bit of hour. We finally got some college football in. Obviously, the Tigers have taken taken precedent for obvious reason, and they will continue to. And we will talk. We'll see. We'll have to figure out how we're going to do this Sunday because the Tigers will be playing at our normal 8 o'clock start time on Sunday. So maybe we'll do a little preview show or something for the day because that's going to be a very special day this Sunday at Detroit sports with the Lions, the way they've been playing. Just phenomenal football, and they're going to be playing Cincinnati, and I think that is going to be an absolute beatdown. I think the Lions are going to put on a show.
Which is hard for me what to do with Jamar Chase and fantasy football without no Joe Burrow, but I digress. Yeah. Hey, we got to give a quick shout out to Mark for hopping in the chat. He's the man, Mark Stowers, great guy. Awesome. Thanks for commenting, Mark. And we'd love to get in on some Leprechauns games next season. We would have fun doing that. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, he wants the Wishbone brought back.
Oh, Mark, we've had those conversations. Oh yeah. Maybe that'll be a fun conversation for one of the next ones where we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deep dive.
SEC, baby, Ole Miss Rebels. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, for sure. Cool. Well, good stuff, Brian. Brother. Good job.
Another good episode, Brian. And again, we'll be back next night. We'll let you guys know. Maybe we'll try to do like a kind of preview show for that day. Again, it's going to be a great day Sunday. And man, what a day! What a day for the Tigers. They get past their arch nemesis. Finally, get past the Guardians. Put them away. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. Unfortunately, it had to be this difficult. Blow a 15.5 game lead, lose the division to them. You think they got the series won after a school, and then they had the unbelievably horrible game 2, 1 for 15 with runners in scoring position. The vibes are down. Everybody thinks there's done, and then they bounce back and have one of the great wins in Tiger history today, and they advance to the ALDS. And that'll do it. That'll do it for us. And for Brian Barnes, I'm Dan Murphy. This has been Inside the Coach's Office, and we'll see you Sunday night.